At the beginning of class, the professor raised a glass with very little water. He was holding this glass until all the students paid attention to it, and then he asked, "What is the weight of this glass to your opinion?" 50 grams, 100 grams, 125 grams, the students suggested. "Well, I don't know its weight either," the professor continued. "We should weigh it in case we want to find out its exact weight. But here's another question. What if I continue holding this glass for several minutes?" "Nothing will happen," the students replied. "Fine. And what if I hold this glass for an hour?" the professor asked once again. "Your arm will hurt," one of the students answered. "Well, what if I hold the glass in this position for a whole day? Your hand will be petrified, and you will feel strong tension in the muscles, and your hand may become even paralyzed, and you will have to be taken to the hospital," the student said to the audience's general laughter. "Very well," the professor continued calmly, "but will the weight of the glass change during this time?" "No," the students answered. "Then where will the pain in the shoulder and the tension in the muscle come from?" The students were surprised and discouraged. "What should I do to get rid of pain?" the professor asked. "You should put the glass back to the table," the audience responded. "Exactly," the professor exclaimed. "Do the same with life's problems and failures. If you keep your troubles in mind for several minutes, it's fine. If you think about them more than that, you will feel pain. And if you continue to think about them for a long, long time, then they will start to paralyze you. Meaning, you won't be able to do anything else. It's important to think over the situation and draw conclusions. But it's even more important to let these problems go away at the end of each day before you go to bed. And thus, you will be able to wake up every morning fresh and ready to cope with any new situations in life."
Cindy loved her son Kevin very much, so she decided that he would receive all the best. She and her husband John worked hard to make sure their son had a good life. Little Kevin had everything. He had the best toys, the best crib, the best clothes. From birth, the best nanny was hired for him, who knew several foreign languages. Kevin was learning languages from childhood. Cindy didn't stop there. From the first days of his life, Kevin's time was scheduled by the minute. He was taken to massages, swimming lessons with a personal trainer, and outdoor walks. Cindy tried to spend time with her son, but her work and Kevin's activities with professionals did not leave time for playing games together. When the time came, Cindy found the best daycare for Kevin. By that time, the nanny had become almost a member of the family. She came early and left late. Kevin had everything except his parents' attention. Time went on. The kindergarten organized a holiday for Mother's Day. Children took their mothers on stage and recited poetry to them. Cindy, John, and Kevin were going to the party. But the boy, learning that the nanny would not go, burst into tears and said that he would also stay at home. The family decided to take the nanny too. The nanny and Cindy stood with the other moms backstage. It was Kevin's turn to recite the verse. Kevin walked towards them from the other side of the stage. His mom spread her arms out for a hug, but the baby walked past her. He walked over to the nanny and took her hand. "Sweetie," Cindy felt ashamed in front of other mothers. "I'm your mom." The boy looked closely at his mother, then back at the nanny. The nanny looked scared. She loved the baby, but she never turned him against his parents. "Kevin, honey," said the nanny, "go to your mom. Tell her the rhyme you and I learned." "I learned the rhyme with you," Kevin replied. "I will tell it to you because she is never around." Cindy looked at her son with tears in her eyes. She was very ashamed. The nanny leaned over to Kevin and said something to him. The boy sighed, but returned to Cindy and led her onto the stage. He read the poem better than other children and then gave his mother a bouquet of flowers. On that day, Cindy realized that she needed to devote more time to her son. Cindy reduced the number of her son's classes and training and began to work less. From then on, her communication with Kevin was a priority. She and John began spending time with their son more often. For a child, it's not the price tag of gifts and brands of clothing that's important, but parental attention. Give love to your neighbor. Share this video.
Two neighbors simultaneously planted the same vines in their garden plots. They were separated only by the mesh fence. The owner of the first garden allowed the vine to grow as it wants. He gave it full freedom and the right to choose the direction of its growth and its pace. The owner of the second built a support fence around, and it began to grow, leaning on it. In addition, he periodically cut off some leaves and trimmed it. Poor plant, how unlucky it is. No freedom, no right to choose. They also cut off its leaves, said the first farmer to his neighbor. Look at my bush. We planted them at the same time, but mine is already 2 times taller and more magnificent than yours. And yours? As if in imprisonment. I'm so sorry for it, he added. The owner of the second bush was surprised when he heard such words. He believed that his plant was lucky because he takes care of it, shows love, and devotes his time. Time went. Cool and rainy autumn has come. By that time, the first bush was already more than 1 meter in length and width. The second bush was several times smaller and looked more orderly. It wrapped itself around the support and delighted the eyes of passers-by and its gardener. While the first one was usually not noticed by people, it looked like some weed. Nevertheless, this did not prevent the owner from being proud of it. However, the autumn coolness made itself felt more and more, and the first bush began to turn yellow. Covered with decaying leaves, the cold, moist soil wouldn't let it live. Moreover, worms now and then ate up its roots, and then it was pulled to the ground altogether. because it did not have any support. At the same time, the second bush stood unchanged. It wasn't afraid of any weather. Why does this happen? I gave my bush the main thing, freedom, but now it's withering, and the neighboring bush, which has always been surrounded by hardships, lives and blooms. The owner of the first bush was indignant. Soon the vine completely dried up and died, because the dry parts killed the rest of it, and the cold winds didn't leave it any chance. Its owner casually collected what was left and threw it into the trash. The second bush began to bloom and give new fruits, and its owner made it a new fence, slightly larger than the previous one. And all because unnecessary dry leaves and branches were immediately pruned. Now, it's not afraid of either wind or cold. Complete freedom doesn't always bring good, and deprivation doesn't always mean evil. Discipline is not about hardship and limitations. Discipline is cutting off all that is superfluous for the good.